Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Matt Bernier. The Grade 3 Indiana Derby is race number 9 at Indiana Grand on Saturday evening. Three-year-olds going a mile and a 16th. Nice card at Indiana Grand on Saturday. Let's take a peek at the field for the big one, the Indiana Derby. It's a full field, and we have some familiar names in this race, Matt. But let's begin with a horse that is trying to make a name for himself as the now horse in this division. And that is the number 11, Mr. Money, who's coming off two big wins in the Pat Day Mile going one turn, and then he just destroyed the field in the Matt win last time out on the Stephen Foster undercard. This is a tough outside post position, but this is a big-bodied colt, a son of Golden Sense, and he's got the tactical speed to get a good spot going into the first turn.
Yeah, initially when I did my first pass through, I was a little bit concerned with that far outside draw. It's no bargain, and still it might be a little bit of an obstacle for him to overcome. But you brought up the speed that he has. I know he's a nice horse that can sit just off of it, but in a race like this, I don't see any real burners in here. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they're a little bit more aggressive with him to make sure that they can save a little bit of ground on that first turn. But you're right, too. You hit the nail on the head. He is kind of the now horse, and I think this is another opportunity for him to kind of solidify that argument that, you know what? Don't discredit this horse or don't downplay his chances going forward. I don't know how far he's going to ultimately want to go, but with a big effort here, you would have to assume a race like the Travers of the Pennsylvania Derby is next.
There is not a lot of pace on paper, and Timeform US's pace projector is very telling. They have the 11, Mr. Money, out there on the lead in a blue bar scenario, which indicates that Timeform US believes this race will favor horses on or near the early lead. Mr. Money has never been on the lead in the first call in his career. This pace may not be fast. I would expect Mr. Money to be close. Right next door to Mr. Money, to his inside, is another improving three-year-old, and that is the 10, Math Wizard. Just think, this horse has been claimed 3 times in his career, and he just missed last time out in the Ohio Derby behind a nice horse in Owendale. Classic place this year.
Yeah, I thought Math Wizard ran really well. That was his first start off of a little bit of a layoff. If you get that any kind of a forward move, second start off the bench, maybe you're looking at another sort of upset potential here and here with a horse like Mr. Money, who's going to be the pretty overwhelming favorite. I had no knock about Math Wizard coming out of that race. I thought he ran really well that day, especially given the pace dynamics. A little bit of an intriguing run throughout the middle portion. It seemed like the race started to heat up in there because the pace actually sort of fell back to them. They actually had to get into the run a little bit earlier, I think, than ideal. But it was a good effort, and there's no reason to believe that he's not going to run something similar to that. Highest last out raw time form rating in the field with the 123.
I think it's a very good point you made about the pace last time out, because Math Wizard might have actually had to have moved a little bit early. The leader was stopping. It looked like Edgar Zayas wanted to shoot up the rail. That wasn't available. He went to the outside. He got to the front, and that mile and an eighth and a nice horse in Owendale, who just got a great trip from Florent Giroux, might have been the difference. I like him cutting back in distance. Question mark in this race is the 9, Long Range Toddy. We're talking about how Math Wizard, Mr. Money, they're improving with each and every start. One's beginning to wonder if Long Range Toddy was one of those early 2- and 3-year-olds, and they're starting to catch up. The Derby obviously draw a line through. He was impeded in that race. But the Ohio Derby, he just didn't fire.
Yeah, and the Ohio Derby was an alarming one for me because I liked him that day. I thought maybe he'd be an alternative to a horse like Owendale, and there was another horse, Global Campaign, who unfortunately couldn't run that day. But Long Range Toddy, the problem I had with that race is what you said, that it really, when the real running began, he just didn't have any sort of an answer. Now, if you want to look at it and say it was off of a little bit of a layoff, and maybe he'll move second start off, and I'm with you, the Kentucky Derby, he was impeded. And also, I don't think he loves a wet track, so I'll give him the Arkansas Derby as well. I was hopeful we'd get something more similar to that Rebel Stakes 4 starts back. If he does run back to that race, I think he has a puncher's chance in here. The problem is, and now you're getting to that point, that Rebel is kind of a standout now. He hasn't done anything close to that. Until he does, I don't know that I totally trust him.
Let's talk about 2 horses that might make the lead if Mr. Money isn't able to do so, and they have the speed to do so. We'll begin with the 6, Always Mining, who was just the scourge of the Maryland 3-year-old scene earlier this spring, reeling off 6 consecutive victories dating back to last fall. They understandably tried the Preakness. You always have to have a local hope in that race. Last time out in the Easy Goer, he was on the outside. And again, just the rail seemed so great on Belmont Stakes Day. I know he was in the 2-path, but still, he was not on the rail. Majid, the winner, was. Always Mining has shown the speed to make the lead in the past, and he does have races on the go-back.
And the way that he's run in each of these past 2, like you say, the track not in his favor in the Easy Goer, the Preakness, he's probably just overmatched, and he was relatively close to a hot pace that day. I think they should be just aggressive with him. Just go and try to make the front or be relatively close and try to take it as far as you can. I'm not sure how far he ultimately wants to go, but this mile on the 16th shouldn't be any sort of an issue for him. I also do wonder a little bit, those races in Maryland early on in the year, it's one thing to go out there and dominate inferior company. I do wonder a little bit, does he quite stack up against the better horses?
Gray Magician finished second behind Always Mining at Laurel earlier this year, going a one-turn mile, then surprised a lot of folks with a really rock-solid effort in the UAE Derby 2 starts back. The word was that he bled in the Kentucky Derby, a race in which he was probably overmatched to begin with. I like that Peter Miller has given him plenty of time since that race, and Gray Magician, inside of Always Mining, inside of Mr. Money, I'd love to see Ricardo Santana Jr. get aggressive with this one.
Yeah, another one that has shown in the past the ability to be relatively close. He's another one similar to what I was just speaking of with long range Toddy. That UAE Derby to me is kind of the standout, and I don't really know where it came from entirely. I think he ran a better race than Plus Parfait did that day, given the trip and the circumstances. But outside of that, sure, if you want to say that he bled in the Kentucky Derby, just draw a line through that race. The runs prior to that, they're solid, but they're not spectacular, and they don't give him any real edge or actually don't even stack up competitively with some of the better horses. If he runs back to the UAE Derby, I suppose he's got a chance. I just want him to prove to me that that's legit.
I tried to make Royland in here, drawing an advantageous inside post for Tom Amos. Heck, this horse got within 4 lengths of War of Will when War of Will was streaking at the fairgrounds earlier this year. Last time out in the Oaklawn Invitational, he just got bounced around coming out of the gate. He was far back. He split horses, got to the outside, and he finished evenly. I think there's something here with this horse. The problem is twofold. A, he doesn't break from the gate, and B, he doesn't have any speed. And if Timeform US is right about a blue bar scenario, he's in big trouble. But I do think there's going to be something for him down the road.
Royland for me, and it's not just because of the connections Tom Amos trained. It reminds me a little bit of Lone Sailor, where there's just no early speed. You're going to be coming from the back. And more often than not on dirt, that's just not a running style conducive to victory. You might be able to cash a lot of checks. I don't know how often you're going to get your picture taken. I kind of feel the same way with this one.
Dallas Stewart has a lot of late developing horses, Note Seeking the Soul, and a couple of others that blossom at the end of their 3-year-old campaign and into 4. He's got a couple in here. Let's start with Fralick Moore, who is stretching back out in distance for Dallas. That's been a good move for him in the past. I thought last time out he was making a good solid rally going 6 furlongs. I think he's slightly getting better. He just needs to improve from a speed figure standpoint.
Yeah, another interesting thing for me with this horse, I don't love him in a spot like this, but I can't help but notice it. It feels like his 2 best races have come fresh off the bench, and maybe he's that kind of horse that, he strung together 5-6 races after this one in a row. Maybe when he comes back, wherever that may be, I'm sure it would be Allowance Company, or if he runs well here, somewhere else, maybe he's that kind of horse that just needs a little bit of a freshening, and then he pops.
The other Stewart entrant, the 8 Chess Chief, added blinkers last time out in his first start against older horses, and I thought he ran okay, finishing 4th. He is now paired up Beyer tops. I would expect a forward move here, but if I was projecting a buyer for this horse, it would be high 80s, and I'm not sure that's good enough to win this race.
Agreed, but he is the one that I'm sort of outside of the obvious contenders in here. He's the one I was most intrigued with because I do think he continues to improve. You're right. I'm figuring he's going to move up into that high 80, maybe scraping a 90. But I don't see a scenario where that's fast enough to win. I will be using him underneath, though.
Before we get to our top selections, we'll talk about a couple long shots. The 2 Hero Tiger might show a little speed, stretching out off several sprint runs at Arlington over the poly track. The last time this horse raced on fast dirt, he was a winner. After 15 starts and only 1 win, I wonder where the necessary improvement is going to come from.
Yeah, and like you say, 1 win from 15 starts, but also through 15 starts, a 77 buyer for his career best, simply not fast enough.
Market Garden came from the clouds to win his maiden on the turf at Indiana Grand. Might be a nice claim for these connections, but talk about a hike in class.
A giant move up, and also from a numbers standpoint, just pales in comparison to any of the contenders.
Steve Margolis, I like what he did with his Sken for It. He dropped this horse in for a tag to get a confidence booster, found a nice starter allowance, almost pulled off the repeat in that race. He is going the right way, seems to appreciate distance. I like his tactical speed. I think he can work out a good trip in here, but again, there are class questions that he must answer.
And I suppose he is a horse that if you're playing any exotic, you could use him underneath because of what you said, that tactical ability that he has. And it seems like he is trending the right direction, but from a win standpoint, he looks a little tough.
Let's take a look at our top selections for the Grade 3 Indiana Derby. Matt, where are you heading in this one?
Yeah, Mr. Money for me. I just think it's one of those instances. I was initially dubious about how far this horse wanted to go. I felt like the turn back to 1 mile in the Pat Day. I thought that was why the light bulb went on and he was going to be a monster like that. And I was a little bit looking forward to taking a shot against him in the Matt win. And all he did was go out there and just really improve on the Pat Day effort. I just wonder, maybe this is a horse that has come into his own for Brett Calhoun. I expect him to run well here again. The pace situation seems advantageous. And again, I feel like this is a stepping stone. If he runs well here, I think you just have to start looking at him saying maybe he is one of the big boys for the Travers of the Pennsylvania Derby.
Give me numbers.
11, 10, 9, and 8.
I'm going 11, 10, 1, and 8. I do like Mr. Money as well. Just really like the way he looks. He just seems to have grown up over the last few months. And I think 1 mile and a 16th, as he proved last time out, is no issue. Royland would be interesting for me if this pace surprisingly heats up. I would want to use him defensively in multiple race wagers. Again, I think there's something for him. But 11, 10, 1, 8 for me. The Grade 3 Indiana Derby. Nice card in Indiana Grand on Saturday night. This race has an approximate post of 10:02 Eastern. Good luck.